Some seasons of life lift us up, others challenge us to our core. Today's episode is all about what it takes to rise again and again, no matter what life throws your way. Welcome to Building Resilience Podcast, episode 250, She Rises, with special guest Molly Claire. Welcome to Building Resilience, a podcast where theory, practical strategies, and inspiring stories show you how to unlock your best life. I'm your host, Leah Davidson. As a certified life coach, speech-language pathologist, and nervous system resilience expert, it is my mission to teach you how to be more resilient to life's adversities. I will show you how to manage your mind, befriend your nervous system, process your emotions, and even eliminate stress. It's time to do more than just survive. It's time to thrive. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm excited to share with you a conversation that I had. I'm joined by my friend, my mentor, Molly Claire. She is a master coach mentor, a best-selling author, and the founder of the Master Coach Collective. Molly has trained and mentored thousands of coaches and entrepreneurs to build 6- and 7-figure businesses rooted in their values and personal priorities. So Molly is also the genius behind a powerful new book called She Rises. It's written by a group of inspiring women coaches who share their stories and wisdom on navigating challenges like difficult emotions, major life transitions, and really seasons of uncertainty. It is filled with these real, relatable insights for anybody who is wanting to face life with more resilience and more hope. Now, I think the conversation I had with Molly feels like you're kind of listening in on two friends sitting down to talk about a really good book, sharing some insights, some ideas, and reflections. And if you are ready to take those reflections even further, then I encourage you to also check out my mental health stationery brand, Resilient Brilliance. Now, I currently have the Resilience Journal and my Safe Space affirmation and journal prompt cards available on Amazon. The links will be in the show notes. And I'm launching shortly a worry pad and workshop. And then later in the year, I have my doodle journal that is going to be coming out as well. So there's lots of beautiful companions to this She Rises book that I'm going to be talking about with Molly and to this episode. So you can learn how to create daily practices that support your nervous system, nurture your emotional well-being, and remind you that you don't have to navigate life's ups and downs alone, and you can rise too. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. So, welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to talk with Molly Claire. Molly has been on the podcast a few times. It's like you're a regular guest, Molly.
I know. I love it. It's like home away from home on your podcast and vice versa on mine.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
love coming and talking in your podcast. So, Molly has created something that I thought was really special. These things are dear to my heart because, as my audience knows, I have created a mental health stationery line. I have, my resilience journal. I just came out with my safe space affirmation and journal cards. And in a couple of weeks, I am doing a pre-launch for my next new product, which is all going to be about worry. And it's a whole evidence-based program to help people manage worry because we're worried. We are very, very worried. So, and then I have a super exciting one coming out. It's a actual doodle journal guide. It's going to take you through. So it has broken my brain the past 18 months working on these projects. And then I heard Molly has had her brain broken with 12 other women, some of them very dear to my heart as well, that they are either have taken the advanced training with me or in the advanced training. And so I wanted to have her on the podcast. The title of her book that she has created with 12 others. Is it 11 others or 12 others?
Yeah, there's 13 of us, 12
13
others. Yeah.
altogether. It's called She Rises. And I wanted to invite Molly on the podcast to talk about that book. And if you can stop for a moment, and when you hear the title, She Rises, what comes up for you in your brain and in your body as a listener? Because I'll tell you, for me, first of all, it's beauty from ashes. That's the first thing that always comes up for me. But then really thinking of women and some of the incredible ways that they have built resilience, the incredible ways that they are growing their capacities, that they are expanding their life, that they are taking care of themselves, stepping into their own. And I just want to hear from you, Molly, about this book. So let me hear all about what you have to say about She Rises.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have so much to say, and more than that, so many feelings about it, as you can imagine. So She Rises, this, uh, I'll, I, I'll tell you a little bit about how it started.
Mm-hmm.
So the 12 women that have co-authored this with me have all trained with me as master coaches, and they've learned from Leah as well, right? Because
Yeah.
Leah teaches the nervous system section of that. And so that's what's really fun about this too. All of these women have been touched by your work, and it is evident in each of their chapters that this nervous system piece is just it's just such a big deal. So anyway, I digress. So back in earlier this year in May, I was approached to be a part of a book collaboration where it was like a book and it was like, like endorsed Tony Robbins, and it was a collection of coaches. And I'm like, oh, this seems like a good idea, something worth
Mhm.
looking into. And I was considering it. And what I kept noticing is that it wasn't a bad book, but it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel aligned to me. And I kept trying to convince myself that it would be a good idea. And as I was thinking through it and talking with my mastermind, it hit me just like a bolt of lightning. Like, you know who I would actually like to be shoulder to shoulder with a message and writing a book with, it would be these incredible women who I have seen rise up, right? These women who I have seen develop themselves, work with their own emotional mastery, learning themselves, bringing that awareness, and that they are pouring their heart and souls into helping other people. And so I was on a walk one day and I just almost could like see their faces in my mind on this book cover. And and I just decided to say, let's go for this. And so it happened like this was May, right? And we're having
I
this
know when you
conversation
said
now.
that, I was like, what? How
You're
did
like,
you do that?
did
We'll have to
she
talk separately about how you did this so quickly.
it is my greatest strength and my greatest downfall that I do things like that. So we'll have that for another episode. But so anyway, in fact, when I reached out to Everett, my book guy who'd helped me with my other book, he said, "Yeah, this sounds great. It's going to take a while to get people on board. He's like thinking this won't happen as quickly." And I said, "Trust me, like I know these women
Yeah.
and I can feel the power and it's going to happen." And sure enough, we had these 12 women signed on as authors. By the end of May, we had our meeting. We got in, we wrote those chapters, and here we are. So that's kind of the backstory of this. But the book is it's such a beautiful collaboration because each of these women have their own unique experience, obviously, of what has happened within them, within their lives,
Mm-hmm.
their growth journey, their own relationship with their emotions and growth. So each of them has their own journey and their own story that is unique. And also the through thread of this book truly is about helping one another as women in community, right? Caring
Right.
about one another as women. And really speaking to we as women have such an opportunity to support ourselves and be supportive to one another as we create a strong foundation within ourselves.
Right.
Every challenge that we face is an opportunity not just to get through it, like you said, right? But
Yeah.
to thrive. And so, really, the through thread is every single woman, every human, right? Not just women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every person matters. Your worth is not negotiable. And
Yeah.
when we can really decide to believe that as absolute truth and take care of ourselves inside and out, we are able to grow and do amazing things in the world. So that was a mouthful, but that's kind of my
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I love that. And I know that you and I have talked before that looking at each individual has their story.
Yep.
And we all go through things in life We all have adversity. I say like adversity is like your shadow. It's always going to be there. Depending on where the sun is, sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small, sometimes it's in front of you, sometimes it's behind you, but it's always there. And so I love that each woman was able to really write about whether it's an adversity they've overcome or just a realization of finding themselves or rediscovering themselves. I think that, probably a lot of my listeners are similar to me in that midlife where we have spent a good majority of our time taking care of others in our life. Now, whether it be like, I know you're a coach as well, so there's professional taking care of, but many of us are taking care of whether it be children or our parents, or we've had a role in caretaking of siblings or something, that we do hit a point, I think, where we stop and want to question, okay, how am I taking care of me? Who
Hmm.
am I when I'm not taking care of other people? Who am I when I'm dealing with adversity? Who am I when I come out of dealing with adversity? So I think that the idea of rising from all of our experiences, all the things that have laid down our foundation, and being able to rise, and what are the tools that we need, and what are the support systems that we need so that we can really blossom from all the things that we're rising from.
Exactly. And I think that, this thought just came to me. So it feels like a bit of an out of the blue comment to make, but for whatever reason, I think it's an important thing for us to notice is that, so I think everyone listening, all of you can think about those most difficult times in your life, right? Maybe you're going through it right now, or maybe you think of that difficult time. And it's just interesting to notice that when we are in some of those hardest moments, those are the times that we often feel the weakest,
Yeah.
right? When it's like the things we say are, this feels unbearable, this feels
Yeah.
overwhelming. We feel the weakest. And what's ironic is at a distance, right? When I see a dear friend of mine going through that, they're feeling that. But typically what I'm seeing is actually the incredible strength that they're
Right.
demonstrating and building as
Mm-hmm.
well. And
Mm-hmm.
so, that thought just came to me because I think it's really important that we remember that, because sometimes when we're feeling the weakest or feeling like we can't really handle that, we believe that feeling as a true
Right.
reflection of what we're capable of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When really some of our weakest moments are the greatest moments of strength, or the quote unquote weakest moments that we think are actually our greatest growth opportunities and our greatest moments of strength.
Yeah.
And sometimes we do need other people to point that out. Just so that people get a sense of what are some of the chapters about. What are some
Mhm.
of the things that these amazing women are
Yeah.
sharing in the book?
Yeah. So at the beginning, my chapter is at the beginning and it's talking about specifically for women in business, highly ambitious women, high responsibility women, how we really need to prioritize wholeness over hustle. So that's
Mhm.
one example of a topic where, right, we've been sold this idea that we need to hustle and hold
Yeah,
everything together, and it's not serving anyone, as you know,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's really taking a shift away from that. And then throughout the chapter, it's like I would love to name every single one of them. I
Yeah,
know we
I
don't
know.
have like
We don't want to
hours
point
here.
anything out. I just want a little bit of a flavor so that people
Yeah.
listening can see, okay, what do I relate to? Because I think when we hear
Yes,
somebody else has gone through or going through something similar, just not feeling so alone in itself is so comforting
totally.
to the nervous system. It just
Totally.
wants that. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, so, you know, all who Leah, you also know because she's
Hmm.
been in both of our communities. She's a doodling coach and she's
Hmm.
talking about really embracing doodling to know yourself, right? Which applies to kind of any scenario. And she is such a brilliant coach. She is just a
Hmm.
beautiful human being and the work in that chapter is just incredible. Eugenie talks about inner boundaries, where, we hear a lot about setting boundaries, but she's really talking about those ways inside, right, that we can feel a little weak in advocating for ourselves or, what we expect for in our lives. Margot has a chapter on grief. She personally has buried two of her children, and
Mm,
she is a grief educator, and she specializes in supporting women through that. We have Sandra and Carla and Angela, all different flavors of working with our emotions
mhm,
and overcoming perfectionism.
mm,
And Angela and Marianne actually are both they're tapping
mhm,
practitioners. So they're talking about how to use tapping to connect with self.
mm.
There's a chapter on, it's called Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, What the Heck Happened? And that's Jackie, and she's a midlife coach, and it's just
Oh, okay. I know what she's talking about.
okay.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, that sounds familiar. And I will say, because I know there are male listeners as well, and I think this book is not just for women, honestly.
Right.
And there is one chapter in this book that is for men specifically. First of all, I think men and women should read the whole thing, but it's called Why I Make Grown Men Cry by Patty Kohler. And she works with men on navigating their emotions and helping them get in touch with them. And so, and I'll just mention these last authors as well. Kelly Arthur has an incredible story of perseverance, and she talks about really doubling down on self-care. And, also related to that is Midori Takada, who is a burnout coach, for professional women. So, I mean, that gives you the flavor. These are the
Yeah.
chapters, and every single one is just beautifully nuanced, and is really going to give the reader's insight into their own emotional world, into their own needs, into the ways they can move forward and create more resilience.
I love that. I love that there's such a wide variety because I do think that by the time you hit a little bit older in life, you start to realize that while everybody has their own unique flavor and own unique challenge, you will come across things that are going to put you to the test, that are going to push your nervous system to, like, the upper and the lower limits. And how do you navigate that? And what are the tools that you need to navigate? And what are the support systems that you need to navigate? So I love that here we see, like, this is the variety. You might not have experienced exactly what these people have experienced, but common humanity tells us we all are going to experience something along the lines of adversity and challenge and need
Yeah.
to build up.
And I think knowing each of these women the way that I do in such a personal way, having supported them, what I can say is they're they're such genuine women, and women who really take to heart their own transformation.
Mhm.
And I think that's a big deal because I just think there are a lot of books on the shelf. There are a lot of people that are authors. There are a lot of people that can write about a method. But to have a collection of women who truly have leaned into their own growth and are willing to be vulnerable and brave
Mhm.
enough to share it,
Mhm.
it's a pretty magical thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
You mentioned about growth, and I just want to take the conversation a little bit in that direction because I look at growth as being one of the most important things I can do in my own life. I see that for myself. I don't want to speak for everybody and say it's the most important thing you can do, but I see how it has really served me. I do a lot of my growth through growing a business
Mm-hmm.
and, putting myself in situations that are challenging. They challenge my brain, they challenge my capacity, doing new things. Can you talk about what you think are some of the best ways, or maybe not best ways, some of the ways that if a woman is out there, or anybody, like you said, a human is out there and sort of feeling stuck, what are some ways that you think that they can help grow through whatever they're experiencing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came to mind is thinking about how much we often resist change or we push against
Mhm,
whatever is happening to us. And
mhm.
and it's normal to do that, right? As you
Yeah,
know. And
yeah.
so, I think, and this is maybe a slightly different answer or thought than what you were asking. And if that's the case, bring me back on course. But I think that, you know, when it comes to growth, the more we can really lean into what's happening, embrace what's happening, and kind of ask those questions of what's here for me within what's going on. How can I be adaptable? How can I be resilient? How can I work with what's coming toward me instead
Right.
of believing that it shouldn't be happening? Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck and
Yeah.
where growth is limited when
Yeah.
we're just right thinking this shouldn't be happening and we're pushing against it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because when we push against it, we limit the opportunity for growth because there's no room for growth because
Hmm.
we're sort of at a standstill. Yeah, that's interesting to think of it in terms of how can I go with the flow? How can I let what is be what is?
Hmm.
I know for
Hmm.
me, obviously, pulling everything, all roads lead back to the nervous system. One of the best ways for growth is to learning about your own nervous system and learning to understand what are the areas in your nervous system where you get stuck, where have you been stuck? What are the ways that you can grow your capacity? How can you grow your capacity? Working on being more flexible, all those things are different ways of addressing growth. And I
Yeah.
think what you're speaking to, the resistance is about the nervous system, right? A healthy nervous system is a flexible nervous system that it can approach and go up and down with challenges.
Yeah, and the other thing that just came to mind, it's like I know that you've said this before as well, that people kind of put like the nervous system and emotions, they're separate things to look. They're in right there. The nervous system is the backdrop of thoughts and
That's right.
emotions, obviously,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but also they're also a separate conversation. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I'll say in terms of this idea of accepting what is and leaning
Mhm.
into what's happening. What often happens is, so let's say, for example, that a family member gets a terrible diagnosis of some kind,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And immediately we don't want that to be the case, right? We're pushing against it. We're we have resistance to it.
Mhm.
And you could plug any circumstance into that scenario, right? That is unwanted, that is jarring, and oftentimes what is really needed is there is a grief
Yeah.
within that circumstance that's come up, right? The grief of what you wished could have been,
Yeah.
right? The grief of what this means now. Because the fact is that I can look back on my life and my life is vastly different than what I thought
Yeah.
it would be. And there are
Yeah.
many things in my life that have not come to fruition that I have felt really deeply sad about. And
Yeah.
so, one of the things that I just want to throw out there, if someone is feeling like they are having resistance to accepting what is it's really, there is a lot of value in taking a minute to just journal about what where is there, I don't know that this is the right question to hit on that spot, but where is the grief in this? Or what am I so sad about? What is it that I
Mhm.
perceived I would have that I'm losing out on,
Yeah.
that's missing here? Because I think that most of us don't know what to do with grief. We haven't been
Yes.
taught what to do with it. And
Yes.
and that grief will get stuck. It will get stuck there. I was
Mhm.
coaching a woman just the other day, and she had some grief come up from something 15 years earlier,
Yeah.
and the current situation didn't make sense to why she was feeling angry and resistance to the
Yeah.
situation. And lo and behold, she had some grieving to do. And so I
Mhm.
just want to say that resistance that comes up, and it's fine for us to say, oh, we need to accept what is. And let's be kind and patient with ourselves and realize sometimes it's because we really don't know what to do with those deeply sad, hard feelings that are there.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
I like that you're bringing up the example of grief because I think it is one that we all experience. So we often
Yes.
associate grief with death, but it can be the death of somebody. It can be the loss of a relationship. It can be, I know that I talked several months ago where I was saying as I was looking at getting older and my children getting older and creating their own lives. And there's a sense of, and I've talked about this recently on my podcast, I feel like I've been bringing my poor emerging adult kids up a lot. But I think it's because there's a grief that I'm experiencing. And
Yes.
it's an excitement. Like I look at their life, all their lives, and I love what they're doing. And I'm like, yeah, they've got their ups and downs and challenges like all kids, but they've got adventures and they're trying to figure things out. And there's a beauty in watching that. And there's an unspoken grief that I sit and I look and I can remember when I used to walk through the door coming home at the end of the day, and they would all be there with their stories of what was happening, and I was needed. And there was like as seasons go, like the first day of school, we didn't have any pictures this year. And then Halloween runs around and there's a grief. And that almost feels ridiculous to say it's grief because we've labeled grief has to be a certain way. Like grief is, oh, when you lose somebody. But I think grief is also like, I remember grieving when I got divorced, the grief of the life that I thought I was going to have. And then for years, I remember grieving like Christmas Day because I have never had Christmas Day. I got in the divorce Christmas Eve. I never got Christmas Day. So Christmas Day, I always say to people, and now I can be more open and accepting of it. I hate Christmas Day. It is like my most horrible day of the year because it was associated with grief. And I think that grief and the emotions and exploring that and not being resistant to it is where you can find growth and where you can find connection.
I mean, absolutely. And one of the things we have a extensive study on grief in my training program, and this is exactly why. Because same thing, I always thought of grief as a death, and then I
Yeah.
remember like a couple years after my divorce, understanding, oh, that was a grief. Like I went through grief with that, and
Yeah.
since what I've learned is just how often and how many ways we actually experience grief in our lives, because
Hmm.
grief is anytime there is a perceived loss.
That's
And
right.
it is a feeling that needs to be processed. So for example, when, as a if there's a mom or dad listening and you are maybe in a power struggle with your child and you're frustrated with them, it's very possible that you're really sad that their behavior isn't the way you wanted it to be, or that
Yeah.
they're not making the choices you wish they would have made, right? And so,
Hmm.
truly, if we think about what our hopes and expectations are for life, even on a daily basis, and how often that doesn't happen, I think that within this theme of rising up, it's really important that we all become more aware of the ways that sadness and loss and grief, even in those little ways, actually needs to be cared about. And we can
Yeah.
support ourselves and get that support. And it builds a really strong foundation.
Yeah.
Grief experienced and processed
Yeah.
builds strength in us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say almost all emotions that are uncomfortable, we tend to resist.
Of
Um,
course.
but there are
Yeah.
so many lessons behind those emotions. Grief is one that I think we're talking more about, but there are still so many other, and it sounds like that's what you're touching on in your book too. A lot of the different emotions and
Mm.
exploring our different emotions, the different ways to explore those emotions. Because we also know at the root of like I do a lot of work around chronic pain and chronic illness. And
Mm-hmm.
what do we
Mm-hmm.
see behind chronic pain and chronic illness? We see a lot of repressed, unexpressed emotions, people not having permission, whether they learned to not have permission or they didn't feel they had their permission themselves. These
Mm-hmm.
emotions need to be expressed. Otherwise, the body's like, if you don't express them,
You're going to feel it.
you're going to feel them. That's right.
It's
I'm
going
going
to,
to express them for you, and you're not going to get a choice of
yep.
how that's going to show up. So yeah, I
Yep.
love and again, so then exploring these emotions,
Yeah.
exploring the things that maybe we don't want to go there is really unlocking a door to growth, awareness, insight, and to
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to build that resilience and to rise up from whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
that we're facing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and emotions are a topic obviously woven all throughout the book. And
Yeah.
one in particular, chapter 3, Carla's is the message in the feeling. I mean, that
Mhm.
is the whole focus of her chapter. And it's funny because I remember, in the beginnings of the book and us talking about it, and she knew the emotion work she did was most important. She knew this is what she wanted to write about. And then a part of her brain was telling her, "Oh, this is too vague," right? Like
Yeah.
a feeling. And so I just think that's worth pointing out because as you and I are talking about this and we're understanding,
Mhm.
what this means as far as being with the emotions and processing it, most people really don't know. And even a
Right.
lot of people who are very self-aware and in the self-help world, it can still seem a little bit vague. And
That's
so
right.
I think that's why it's important to learn to understand, right? Read books like this and others
Yeah.
because that's probably the biggest thing, obviously, like honestly for me, Leah, because as you know, I started out very focused on mindset work.
Mhm.
And of
Mhm.
course, now I teach more of the whole perspective,
Holistic.
like the whole person view. But the emotion piece for me
Yeah.
has
It's massive.
been and continues to be the thing that has completely changed my sense of self,
Yeah.
my sense of connection with others. Like it has been the thing. And I feel like I have taken such a deep dive into it personally and in
Yeah.
my studies. And there's still so much more to
So
learn.
much to know. Yeah.
It's like this never, it's like Pandora's box. Like it's never
Yeah,
ending, you
yeah,
know?
that's what happens with emotions. And I will say,
Yeah.
I talked about this on an episode not so long ago where I talk about the distance between Gen X and Gen Z or Gen Z. I can't remember what do they call in the US it's Z, but we call it Z. So I tried really hard in my podcast episode to just stick with Gen Z. But one of the things I talked about, which is probably a little bit controversial, is we have as parents who are Gen X parents tried to raise our children with more of an emotional vocabulary, more of an
Yeah.
emotional understanding, which I think is amazing. And I'm so happy about it. However, I think that it is one thing to have an emotional vocabulary, and we all need to continue to work on it. But there also does require life experience and maturity to manage all these emotions. It is not enough to just have emotional vocabulary and be able to label things. And I think that's why it is a journey. That's why, I'm 53 years old and it's going to be a life journey for me to continue to process these emotions. So even though I've raised my children who, they've got a good emotional vocabulary, I am
Hmm.
also looking at it and saying, yeah, that's going to serve you well as you start collecting all the experiences and the maturity to fully understand and express and validate and appreciate all your emotions. It's
Hmm.
not just about the words. The processing has a lot more to it that I
Hmm.
believe is going to be a lifelong journey.
I mean, it is. And I think, especially, one of the things that just I do a lot of work with this with myself and with
Mhm.
my clients as well is really tuning in and paying more attention to our own emotions
Yeah.
and taking ownership of them. Not in, I think sometimes we can use this word of like taking ownerships of your emotions or you're responsible for them as if they're kind of this ugly thing that we need to claim, right? The
Yeah.
good, the bad, the ugly,
Yeah.
whatever. But it's like actually when I think about taking ownership of my emotions, I think about noticing that all of my emotions, they're housed within me.
Right.
And therefore, the more I can tune into what's going on for me and making enough space to understand those emotions, we begin to see more often the ways in which our emotions are not about other people.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that is how those emotions are very much indications of things on the outside that are also not okay for us, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I just think I agree, like understanding our emotions, being with ourselves in our emotions, and really, it's like I think about it as understanding our own emotional world is a
Mhm.
lifelong journey.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
completely is. Well, I am excited for this book to get out there. Please share with people where they can find the book, where they can find you, get more information.
Yeah. So I depending on when this is out, of course, as this is
Mhm.
airing now, the book is out and available on the 30th of September, September 30th,
Wonderful.
2025. So I have a wait list. We're going to be telling everyone about it that day. We are going to have the Kindle available for either $1.99 or $9.99. We're still waiting to see how low Kindle will allow us to price the
That's
book.
right. Awesome.
So, but that day, that's the price it will be. And then after that day, it's just available on Amazon. People can go to mollyclaire.com
Mhm.
and you can find the book link there, or you can go to Amazon, She Rises, type in Molly Claire, and you'll see, all of the authors there. But yeah, I mean, each chapter is it's awesome to have like a bite-sized piece
Yeah.
of, wisdom and guidance. And there are a lot of extra resources along with it as well. I know in my chapter, I have a free workbook to help people really personalize it.
Oh,
So,
wonderful.
yeah,
Wonderful. Well, thank you
yeah.
so much, Molly. It is always such a joy to have you on and to share the wisdom. And I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And I can't wait for everybody to get their hands on
Thank
this
you.
book.
Thank you. And I just huge shout out to these really incredible coaches and
Hmm.
co-authors of this book because they have put their heart and soul into it and gone through their own journey of being very visible, which
Yes,
can
I
be
know,
can
which
be
is very
uncomfortable.
scary. Yes,
Yeah.
I love
So,
it. I love it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Take care.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Building Resilience podcast. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about managing stress, building resilience, and leading a more purposeful life, then make sure we're connected on Instagram and Facebook at Leah Davidson Life Coaching. You can also subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.leahdavidsonlifecoaching.com/newsletter. Looking forward to connecting.